Plaintiff Tara O'Shea says years after the defendant was a referee for her son's basketball league, they reconnected, and she allowed him to stay at her home. However, Tara claims after they started a sexual relationship, the defendant conned her, and she's suing him today for breach of contract and childcare fees. Defendant Monty Coley insists he never had a sexual relationship with Tara, and the only reason he's in court today is because he rejected her sexual advances. Monty denies owing Tara for anything.
Start with you.
Your Honor, I brought this case to you today because I feel very sorry for this man. He's a con artist and he's a liar and he uses people when there's no reason to.
Give me some examples.
Well, that's why the case is brought to you today. Hopefully someone else won't be duped by him.
Has it happened to other people to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so he was a con man with you.
Yes, and a liar.
And a liar with you.
Yes.
We don't know if that's the case generally.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know for sure.
Generally a liar
Absolutely
and a
not.
user?
Absolutely not.
Okay, all right. Tell me about the two of you associating.
Yes, sir. I knew the defendant about 15 years ago. He was a referee for my son's basketball games. He also worked at the YMCA where I was a member, so I saw him there periodically. He's an attractive man. I was very attracted to him. We became acquainted at the various games and at functions at the Y. He was arrested a few years later and left the area in disgrace because of some meth drug issue. And he had been gone for a number of years. And one day I was out doing yard work last spring, and he parked literally across the street from my home. And he started walking up the street, and I called his name out, and he turned around and it was him. And, I told him who I was, reminded him who I was, and he came right over, gave me a big hug, and, we talked for a while. He said he'd stop back by, which he did, and we became reacquainted. And so he needed a place to stay for a couple of weeks.
Reacquainted, did you all date or have relations
We
of
had
some
relations,
sort?
Yes, we were intimate, and we had a relationship.
Was that the first day you saw him out of jail?
No, not the first day I saw him out of jail, no.
Okay. You knew if he had been to jail, Doc, he'd be on fire.
He wouldn't have been nearly as attractive then.
He would be very attractive in
I don't know about
some
that.
capacities.
Plaintiff Tara O'Shea insists she and the defendant had a sexual relationship, and she has the text messages to prove it. But the defendant insists he rejected her sexual advances.
How did he con you, all this con stuff?
Well, when I talked to him when we became reacquainted, then I told him I hadn't dated in 3 years. I hadn't been on dates. I hadn't had a boyfriend, and he just kind of zeroed in on that. And then he told me he needed a place to stay, and he stayed 2 weeks.
So tell me about the con part.
Well, it was after that.
Because after all, you remember you flagged him down.
Yeah, I did. I did flag him down. Yes, I did. But, as soon as he found out I hadn't been dating, he immediately, came right over and he was like, "Oh, you haven't been dating."
You told him, stop.
No. No.
You said, "Come right on in."
No,
That's why I flagged you down.
No.
Come right on in. I ain't had none in 3 years. Come right in.
No, Your Honor, it wasn't like that at all.
When did you get around to telling him you hadn't had relations in 3 years?
That was when he came back over.
And what was the purpose of telling him that?
Well, when he came back over, he asked me if I was seeing anyone or not, or, what my dating situation was. And I told him I wasn't seeing anyone. And it was then that he said, "Oh, well, then maybe I could come and stay then, Let
him give some background, because so far, the only con I hear you about to tell me about is storage fees. And let me tell you, if someone's going to con you, it's going to be more than for storage fees. Let's hear from you, sir.
Okay. The reason why I feel like I'm here today is because I did not take this woman's sexual advancements. And all the story is true. I did park across the street from her house because I lived across the street. I was having the back part of where I lived at paved. So, I parked across the street. She called over to me, and I don't really remember her from a long time ago, but I do remember her kids. And so, we talked, and it was good to see her, good to see some different people. And I just think that she's a woman scorned.
Did you all have relations?
Yes, we did, Your
Okay,
Honor. I have
go ahead.
proof here of that.
Okay. And you say you haven't?
Nope.
Those are text messages, Your Honor, from the defendant.
And you responded too.
Yeah, I did. I
Let
did.
me read that first. Hello, I'm naked. Would you bring your supersized over here and... Isn't that what you say on here?
Well, yeah, but you didn't read the part he said.
He invites you. Yeah, he says, well, let me see. He says, come over so I can A, B, C, D. So you did see this woman because you're telling her that you will come over and perform unconventional sex acts on her.
If that's what it says, then that's what it says.
Well, you know you did. Don't try to act like you didn't go with the woman now. You've been with that woman. Now you want to, when you're on national television in front of all your friends and girlfriends, you want to deny it. Don't deny it now. He loved you, didn't he? Is there an age difference here?
There's an age difference.
How many years?
Probably about 14 years or so.
Right on, Cougar. Right on. All right. But if you were playing the con, $200 is some short con.
Exactly.
You need some lessons. I'll take you some of my partners in Detroit who used to be in this game. They'll teach you how to get some real money. You still have some money left?
No.
All right. Anything else you want me to know? You said that she is scorned because you won't date her. That was the first lie. Any other lies?
No, there's
All right,
no other
get
lies.
to some truth.
Get to some truth. Well, there was no childcare. She did not. My young son did come and stay with me.
That's part of the lawsuit. Let me allow her to give that part, and then I'll let you respond.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor. Monty's son was coming up to stay for a week. The girl who I guess was his girlfriend, her daughter was having her tonsils out that week, so she wouldn't let his son come and stay at her house. And so he asked me if I would watch his son while he worked. I told him sure, and he kept saying, I'll pay you, I'll pay you. I'll pay you for storage, I'll pay you for childcare. I said, okay.
How much? What was the agreement?
The agreement was, I have a breakdown of it here.
Let's see it, please.
So,
That is not true.
Plaintiff Tara O'Shea insists she and the defendant had a sexual relationship, and she has the text messages to prove it. But the defendant insists he rejected her sexual advances.
Storage fees, $200, all right, and $125 for child care. When was he to pay?
he was supposed to pay, well, that's when the con started. Originally, he said he'd pay me on June 10th. And on that day, then he said that a woman that he had had her laptop for several months had suddenly that morning come across him and said, you know, oh, you still have my laptop. I want it replaced right now. And if you don't replace it, then I'm going to call the police and you're going to have a record. And so he said that's why he couldn't pay me that day.
All right.
But then it was every couple of days after that.
I got that part, and he has failed to do so, obviously. Sir, what do you want to tell me? She says that you were supposed to pay storage fees, $200, $125 you were to pay for child care, and you were to pay it by June 10th, and you haven't.
The week that my son was here, I actually did not work that week. I was at home with my son, all week. I do a little bit of refereeing here and there. So a couple of days, maybe probably about 3 hours a day, two days out of that week, I did go and referee, which she asked if my son could stay there to play with her grandson who was there, And as far as storage fees, there was never a contract for storage fees when I put a few things in her garage and had things in her room. There was never a contract for that at all. After my son had left, after the 5 days,
there was never a verbal agreement.
There was a verbal agreement. There was a verbal agreement between us for about $200, I would say. That was okay. So there was a verbal agreement, which I did agree to sign after
you signed
everything.
It?
Yes, I agreed to sign that after I was going to leave. And I did leave after 5 days, feeling uncomfortable about being there in the first place.
Childcare too.
But there was never anything about, about childcare.
This childcare occurred when?
The week of June, it was the 5th or the 6th through the 10th.
Of June?
Yes.
Why didn't you include it in this promissory note that was signed 2 weeks after that?
It was a verbal agreement. We already knew that.
Okay, you should have put it on this promissory note.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Because the child care expenses occurred June 10 or second week. This occurred June 23rd when you had him sign an agreement as to the amount he owed you. And you had him sign saying, I only owe you $200. Today, you're saying he told you he owed you $325.
Yes, Your Honor.
But that's not true.
Well, it was our agreement. $325 was our agreement.
I read what the agreement was. Have a good day, ma'am. $200 is your judgment. Stop conning women.
Yes, sir.
Stop being a criminal.
Yes, sir.
And stop trying to perform lewd sex acts that they invite you into the house for. Have a good day. Judgment for the plaintiff.
I don't understand why you lied about that money. I'm sure that you have your reasons, but I don't understand what they are, and I don't lie, so I told the truth.
Well, it's too bad because that's not the truth, and that's actually going to ruin a relationship because I'll never talk to you again after this, ever.